So we're still looking at section 10.1 and taking a system of equations, putting it into matrix form, and doing reduced row echelon form to get our solution. So this is a 3-equation, 3-variable problem. So first thing is to write it as a matrix. So I'm taking all the coefficients and constants, 4, -2, 3, -2, 2, 2, 5, 16, 8, -5, -2, and 4. And my goal is to eventually get it to be 1, 0, 0, something, 0, 1, 0, something, 0, 0, 1, something, right? And then that way the top one will tell me what x is, the second one will tell me what y is, the third one will tell me what z is. Okay? Now, our first goal usually is to get this to be a 1 right here. Somehow, if you have a 1 already, let's say this 2 is a 1, I would simply swap these two rows. Done. I'd have a 1 there. But I don't have a 1 to do that with. So instead, I need to do some sort of combination with these. The problem here is 4, 2, and 8 are all even numbers. So if one of them was odd, let's say 2 was a 3 instead, then I could simply take 3, turn it into a -3, and add it to 4 and get a 1. Problem solved, right? But there's no way to do that with these even numbers here. All right, so you'd be like, I'm done. The only other option at that point, if you really want that to be a 1, would be to go, I'm just going to divide that by 4, divide that by 4, divide that by 4, divide that by 4. It's not the way I like to start off the problem, but you could do that. I don't want to have fractions in here and have to deal with those when I'm getting everything else to be zeros, because then everything's going to turn out to be fractions. And that's going to be ugly really, really quickly. Okay? So, one of the things I told you yesterday, I believe it was that it doesn't matter which column you start with. I typically start with getting the 1 here simply because I like working from left to right. But you don't have to. You could get a 1 in this spot. You could get a 1 in this spot and work on this column first. It's actually pretty easy. I'm looking at it right now and thinking, if I take this 3 and that -2 and I added them together, wouldn't that give me a 1? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take row 1, and I'm just going to add it to row 3. I don't have to multiply by anything. I'm just going to add these together and replace that row, the bottom row. Okay? By the way, this is a problem that I pulled it out of a future problem that we're going to do using a method called Kramer's rule. So this may come out ugly eventually anyway. But I don't think I've ever solved it using this method before. But I just wanted to show you like what my thought process. So I thought this might be a good thing to do. Okay, so that means the 4, the -2, the 3, the -2. Those are not going to change. The second row, I'm not currently changing it. 2, 2, 5, 16. That's not going to change. Hopefully, I've copied everything down correctly. The last thing you want to do is not copy something down correctly. That's a travesty. But now I take 4 plus 8 is 12, so I get a 12 here. -2 plus -5 is a -7. 3 plus -2 is a 1. Hooray, that's what I was shooting for, right? -2 plus 4 is a +2. So hopefully you're with me so far. So instead of starting with the first column, I'm starting with this column, and I'm going to work on getting the zeros in there. So whatever column you start with, it doesn't matter. But make sure you finish doing that column before you move on to a different column. So I'm just kind of working backwards here. So I want to turn this 5 into a 0. So I'm going to use the 1 to do that. So I'm going to take row 3 times -5, and I'm going to add it to row 2. I would like this 3 also to become a 0. So I'm going to take row 3 times -3 and add it to row 1. So hopefully everybody understands what my game plan is here. I'm turning those two things into zeros. I've got written down here what I plan to do. So the third row, the 12, the -7, the 1 and the 2 is not what I'm currently changing, so I'm just going to recopy that. So now I have to take 12 times negative 5, that's negative 60, plus 2 would be a negative 58. Negative 7 times negative 5 is 35, plus 2 is a positive 37, I believe. I sure hope somebody is keeping track of this to make sure I'm not screwing this up royally. And then I take the 2 times negative 5, that's negative 10, plus 16 would be a positive 6. So double check my math and let me know if you get something different. So now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to take the 12 times negative 3, negative 36, plus 4 is a negative 32. And I'm going to take the negative 7 times negative 3, which would be a positive 21. And a positive 21 minus 2 would be a positive 19, I believe. Take the 1 times negative 3 and add it to that. That's a 0, thankfully. Some of the math came out easy. And then take 2 times negative 3 would be a negative 6. Minus 2 would be a negative 8. Okay. So far, so good. So I am done with that column. So now I can go to either this one or this one. Now, I cannot use this row to make that happen. All right, because if I use this, like let's say I took negative 7 times something and added it to 37 to get it to be a 1, you'd also be taking the 1 times something and adding it to 0, which would change that 0. We do not want to undo what we did, all right? It's like the Rubik's Cube example I was talking about yesterday. We don't want to undo the good things we've done. So at this point, whatever equation has that 1 in place that you did for your first column, you can't involve it to get your next 1. But I'm looking at this, I'm like, 19 times 2 is 38, right? So here's what I would do, all right? Hopefully you follow along with what I'm doing here. I'm going to go ahead and change this second equation temporarily to its opposite. I'll make that a plus 58, a minus 37, and a minus 6. I'm going to take this 19, this row 1, I'm going to multiply it by 2, because that would be a 38, and add it to negative 37, that'd be a 1. So I'm going to take row 1 times 2 and add it to row 2. I don't know if I have room over here to do this. I might have to write a little smaller. But this 12, negative 7, 1, 2, that's not going to change. The top row right now is not going to change. Negative 32, 19, 0, negative 8. So I know that 19 times 2 plus negative 37 is going to give me a 1 there. That's the key. And when I take the 0, 0 times 2 added to 0 will still be a 0. This negative 8 times 2, negative 16. Negative 16 plus that would be like a negative 22. What's going to happen here though? Negative 32 times 2 is a negative 64, and then I'm adding 58. That comes out to be a negative 6, right? Yes? So that's not so bad. Now that I have that 1 in place, now I'm going to worry about getting this 19 to be a 0. So I'm going to take row 2 times negative 19 and add it to row 1. I'm going to take that same 1 and take row 2 times 7 and add it to row 3. Because I need to make those zeros. I've got to finish out this column. And I need room to do it. So the middle row I'm not changing. Negative 6, 1, 0, negative 22. So when I take, these two things are going to become 0. That's going to become a 0. So I have to take negative 6 times negative 19. This is where I'm going to have to grab a handy-dandy calculator because I've been doing most of this in my head, which is not a good idea. I think I've told you that before. But I have to take negative 6 times negative 19, negative 6 times negative 19, and then I'm going to add negative 32. Comes out to be a 82. Is that what you guys get? I believe that's right, 82. Okay. So now I take this 0 times negative 19 and add it to 0. That's still a 0. And then I have to take this negative 22. Negative 22 times negative 19, and then add the negative 8, and that comes out to be 410. So now moving down to this one, I have to take, going this way, negative 6 times 7, negative 6 times 7, and then plus 12, comes out to be a negative 30. One times 7 plus negative 7 is going to be a 0. Zero times 7 plus 1 is still 1. And then I have to take the negative 22 times 7 and add it to, I believe that's just a 2 there, negative 152. So I am done with the third column. I'm done with the second column. Now I'm moving on where I need a 1 here. The only way to do that, once you get to your final 1, is to divide by that number. Now, fortunately, I think 410 is divisible by 82. So when I divide this whole thing by 82, I end up with 1005. This one I have negative 6, 1, 0, negative 22. This one I have negative 30, 0, 1, negative 152. I'm ready to get it to look like that one over there. This is just getting in my way. So now I need this to be a 0. So I'm going to take row 1 times 6 and add it to row 2. So the top row, 1005, doesn't change. 1 times 6 plus negative 6 is 0. 0 times 6 plus 1 is still 1. 0 times 6 plus 0 is still 0. 5 times 6 is 30. 30 minus 22 is a positive 8. Lastly, I'm going to turn this into a 0. So I have to take row 1 times 30 and add it to row 3. So 1 times 30 plus negative 30 is 0. 0 times 30 plus 0 is still 0. 0 times 30 plus 1 is still 1. Here's where it pays off. The 5 times 30 is 150, plus a negative 152 or minus 152 is a negative 2. So now I get down to my final answer is 5, 8, negative 2.